We have got some good vibes heading into the weekend coming off of last night where Sean Manaea outscored the entire pitching slate by 17 points as our top pitcher last night. Dansby Swanson went deep. The Braves stack paid off. So hopefully a profitable night for you, which we can now roll over into what I think is a pretty fun slate once again for Friday. We got some good pitching available for us. We've got some stacks that I like quite a bit, both in the high salary range and the low salary range. So let's break it down and try to win some money once again for tonight. Welcome on into the solo shot. That's right here on the FanDuel Podcast Network and numberFire.com. My name is Jim Sanas. I am a senior writer and analyst for numberFire.com, here to break down Friday's 14-game main slate with locks set for 7:05 for tonight. And despite the fact there are 14 games, there's actually not a lot of bad weather in the forecast. So we're good to go. The good vibes paying off, translating over into Friday. Should be a fun slate to dissect and discuss with so many options. We'll have plenty to break down today on the 4 p.m. stream. That's 4 p.m. Eastern on the FanDuel YouTube, Twitch, Facebook, and Twitter pages. Hit us up there, ask your questions, and get set for tonight's slate of MLB DFS. Also right here on the numberFire Daily Fantasy Podcast feed, Austin Swain broke down this weekend's UFC DFS card, gave his thoughts on the main event and his favorite fighters in each salary tier. So find Austin's analysis by going to the numberFire Daily Fantasy Podcast feed and checking that out wherever you get your podcasts. Hey, soccer fans, this season, Captain Morgan and FanDuel are teaming up to give you a one-of-a-kind soccer contest. Introducing Captain Morgan's Soccer Pick'em, a weekly fantasy contest that is entirely free to play. The contest is simple. All you have to do is make quick predictions for Saturday games this soccer season. You'll earn points for each correct pick and compete for a chance to win up to $3,000 in prizes every single week. Head over to FanDuel and enter the Captain Morgan Soccer Pick'em today. Must be 21 plus to participate. For more details, visit FanDuel.com or download the FanDuel Fantasy app. Eligibility restrictions apply, and don't forget to make your game day more delicious and sub in the captain. Pitching preview for this Friday slate. Garrett Cole, facing the Red Sox for roughly the 37th time in the past month, is the highest salary pitcher on FanDuel at $10,500. We got Zach Wheeler facing the Braves at 10-2. Lucas Giolito is facing the Brewers. He is $9,800. Zach Thompson pitching tonight as opposed to last night, which the Marlins refused to confirm throughout the entire day. Either way, he is pitching for today. That is confirmed. He's $9,400. Freddie Peralta, $93, facing off with Lucas Giolito. Then we have Yusei Kikuchi, Alex Cobb, Frankie Montas, Eduardo Rodriguez, and Max Fried, and Patrick Corbin, actually, as the other pitchers at $8,000 or higher. So probably picked up on it when I was talking about Cole. I can't really feel super confident there today because there is a lot of familiarity between the Red Sox and Garrett Cole right now. And also, they're a good team. I am not as concerned about Cole post-sticky stuff discussion anymore, given how well he's pitched the past couple of games. But I think there are enough red flags there from a familiarity perspective to go with Zach Wheeler number one. I think that, to me, it's by a decent margin. And Wheeler has had a couple of rough starts in a row. He's let up 8 earned runs and 11 total runs in those 2 games. I still think he is the top guy for tonight. And part of it is because I think he just got unlucky in those 2 games. He still had really good peripheral stats. He had 13 strikeouts compared to 3 walks. The hard hit rate has been under 24% in both those starts, which likely means he just had some bad luck. So I'm willing to overlook the results in those 2 games. The most relevant sample on Wheeler is his past 8 starts. He has been throwing more sinkers and fewer 4-seamers in that time. And generally, as you know, I hate sinkers. Sinkers suck. But it has worked out well for Wheeler. He has a 3.09 skill interactive ERA in that time. His strikeout rate is 29%, and his batted ball data has been phenomenal. If you can improve your batted ball data while keeping your strikeout rate at 29%, sweet. I'm on board with the sinker. Just not there aren't that many guys who are of the Zach Wheeler mold. Wheeler's facing the Braves today, and I have not used a pitcher against them since the Acuna injury, but it does make a big difference. Our active roster has a 97 WRC plus versus righties. That's slightly below average. Their strikeout rate is 25%. And now I think that we can view them, at least from a DFS perspective, not a real world perspective, but a DFS perspective, I think we can view them as being a plus matchup for a righty. It is still risky good hitters remain. I just mentioned that I stacked them last night, but I am more willing to target them now than I was before. And that's especially true when it is a pitcher as filthy as Zach Wheeler. So I want to put him at the top of my list for tonight. Zach Wheeler, number one pitcher in my mind, despite a couple of down starts recently. Now, Lucas Giolito has had his movement dip over his past 5 starts, and his strikeout rate in that time is 25%. That is a decent decrease, and normally not one I'd feel super great about on this slate, but I do still like Giolito for tonight. He's facing the Brewers. More on that matchup in a second. But as far as the strikeout rate, I think it's deceptive. He has 5 starts in this stretch, and in one of those starts, he had just 1 strikeout. But he's had 5+ in the other 4. He had 7+ 3 times, and that includes each of the past 2 starts. He's had 7+ strikeouts. He had 9 against the Orioles at the start of the stretch and 8 against the Astros last time out. That Astros game was a complete game 3 hitter. You got plenty of whiffs. If he can do that against the Astros, we know that he's not broken, despite the overall dip in strikeouts with the decreased movement. We should still trust the larger sample, and the larger sample on Giolito is one of a very good pitcher. His matchup is still a plus, despite the Brewers' improvements, despite the fact that Willy Adames is disgusting. It's an 88 WRC plus for the Brewers versus righties. They have a 26% strikeout rate. Those do include Adames' full season numbers. Giolito's strikeout rate has gone up on the road this year. It's very weird. Gets to face a pitcher for tonight. Those are all pluses too. And I think that the facing a pitcher angle helps offset the fact that he could leave this game early for a pinch hitter with this game being in the National League. But we do have a sample on Giolito in the National League, and they let him go 111 pitches in that game. So it's not a perfect situation. I think I'd probably prefer him to be in a situation where he's not going to leave for a pinch hitter, but especially I'd prefer him to not have the dip in strikeouts either. But it's still very obvious that Giolito has upside for tonight, and I like him a lot for tournaments here. So not a cash game play. That's Wheeler. Wheeler is the cash game play for tonight, but Giolito, to me, a solid tournament play who could push Wheeler from an upside perspective. As far as the top value play for today, I think you've got 2 options. Eduardo Rodriguez against the Yankees is in play. The one concern there is it's similar to Cole, where they've seen him a bunch recently. He's been good, but it gets concerning. I considered still going Rodriguez just because the Yankees are down so many impactful right-handed bats. So I considered it. But I think the other option here is a bit better. And that guy is Tyler Mahle. I like him a smidge more. So I'm going to ride with Mahle here at $7,600. Facing the Cardinals, which is a plus matchup for a righty. They have an 86 WRC plus with just a 148 ISO. They don't strike out too much. Just a 22% strikeout rate. That's not a plus for Mahle, but they also don't walk much, which is a plus for Mahle. He has started to develop a bit of a walk problem recently, specifically in the past 4 starts with less movement on his four-seam fastball. Mahle's walk rate is 12%. That drives up pitch count. It increases risk, puts guys on base, et cetera, et cetera. But against a more free-swinging team, it's less of an issue than it is in a vacuum. And there have also still been plenty of strikeouts in that span. He has a 28% strikeout rate. His fly ball rate is just 31%. His hard hit rate allowed is 36%. There have been some dingers in that time, but the overall batted ball data is very good. The lone bugaboo, to me at least, in this time has been the walks. The walks could get him in trouble again. There is a reason his salary is $7,600, but he can post a big score. He had a 60 burger just a less than a month ago, or a little bit over a month ago, I think. He's been around 50 a couple other times too, and one of those was against St. Louis back on June 5th. He had 8 strikeouts, over 7 innings in that game. He scored 49 FanDuel points. So yes, there is risk, of course, with Mahle because the walks are scary. Walks will haunt. Shout out to the Metrodome. So Mahle is not for everyone, but he is for me. And I like the risk when it comes with upside, and I think that is the case here. So Tyler Mahle for me, the top value play, but would put him decently behind Wheeler and behind Giolito as well. As far as the stacks for today, I think we got some pretty good ones, starting off with the Dodgers facing Chichi Gonzalez. And this game is in LA, which means that Gonzalez is not at Coors Field. Celebrate. That's awesome. But the numbers he has are ones we can stack against even when he goes on the road. Gonzalez has been back in the rotation for 7 starts now. His skill interactive ERA is 5.00. His strikeout rate is 15%. He's allowing hard contact 45% of the time with a 35% fly ball rate. I would like the fly ball rate to be a bit higher, for a stack against Gonzalez, but it hasn't mattered too much because he still has a 7.47 ERA in that time. And that's not all due to Coors Field. He let up 8 runs in Miami against the Marlins, which was his worst outing in this stretch. So we don't care about ERA for a guy at Coors Field, but it is reassuring that he did struggle when he was on the road against Miami, much weaker offense than the Dodgers. He just faced the Dodgers last week at Coors Field. They scored 7 runs across 4 innings. Now, the results there do not matter because they were at Coors Field. Totally different environment, but the fact that they just saw him does. They know it's coming. That's a good thing for us for DFS. So I think they are the top stack of the night. Hopefully Mookie Betts able to get back in there for today. I think the Dodgers have enough depth to make it work regardless. Want to do a check-in here on Cody Bellinger. The hits have not been there. He went 0 for 4 again last night, and that's concerning. But results can be deceiving. The batted ball numbers for Bellinger are not nearly as bad. From July 1st through Wednesday night, so before last night's game, Bellinger had 5 hits. That's compared to 4 barrels. That's not a ratio you get very often. He's not striking out very much. He's made hard contact recently. He had 3 balls with an exit velocity of 95 plus miles per hour last night. So I don't think this rut for Bellinger is going to keep up forever. His salary is down to $3,400. There's probably a lot of negative sentiment around him. So it might not work. He might actually, they could give him a day off too. So keep that in mind. But I'm down to take some swipes here while others are avoiding Bellinger on this slate. I'd also mention that Billy McKinney is in play if he starts again in the outfield at minimum salary. So McKinney an option for sure, but I'm in on Cody Bellinger despite the really wretched numbers he has had across the past month. The other Los Angeles team is pretty fun for tonight too. The Angels facing J-Happ, and this game is in Minneapolis, which is a good park for hitting this time of year. And Happ is letting up the kind of contact that can take advantage of that warmer weather. To Happ's credit, he has been throwing harder recently. The velocity on his four-seam fastball has been up over his past 8 starts, but it hasn't led to many strides. In that time, he's letting up a 44% hard hit rate with a 44% fly ball rate, which is perfect from a dinger hitting perspective. His strikeout rate is 18%, so a lot of balls in play, and the dingers have flown. He's let up 2 home runs per game on average in this time. That's despite plenty of low-level competition in this stretch. And the Angels, even with all the injuries, are not that. So I'm on board with them here from a stacking perspective, and I think the Angels do grade out pretty well. One thing to check out here with Happ is what he does versus lefties. And not just for Shohei Ohtani. I'd use Ohtani against someone who threw with both arms just for funsies. But I also want to check in because I like Jared Walsh a lot. Brandon Marsh is a lefty too. Happ has faced just 67 lefties so far this year, which tells you that teams tend to just use their best lefties against him. The strikeout rate is 19%. He does a much better job of suppressing hard contact against them, though. So what I would say is we can use lefties like Ohtani, but we need to be selective. If you look at their power numbers versus lefties this year, Jared Walsh is their 3rd best power hitter against lefties. It's Ohtani, Justin Upton, who just came off the IL, and then Walsh 3rd. So I would say both Ohtani and Walsh are in play, despite the fact that Happ is a lefty. Marsh, not quite as much because I'm not as confident in his abilities versus lefties. So Ohtani, Upton, Walsh, all guys we can go to here, and then check out some of the lower salaried righties, preferably not David Fletcher, but I do think that they all work. And I would say Justin Upton is in play despite just coming off the injured list. Finally, for our 3rd stack, the Tigers offense has been much better recently. They have been beating up on rough pitching and some mid-level pitchers, and they get Chris Bubich tonight. And he's been in and out of the rotation. The results have been rough, so I'm back on the Tigers once again for tonight. It's hard to get a read on Bubich in terms of his most relevant sample for my sheet, because I always want to look at guys as starters, because they throw differently. You don't throw as hard when you're starting versus being in the bullpen, and that's tough for him because he's been in and out of the bullpen. But the one thing we can see is that the four-seam fastball for Bubich has had less movement the past 7 overall outings, whether it be in the bullpen or as a reliever or as a starter. That includes 3 outings shorter than 3 innings. So basically you want to take these numbers and adjust them up. But you don't need to adjust them up to justify stacking against him. In that time, in those 7 starts or 7 outings, he has a 5.31 skill interactive ERA with an 18% strikeout rate. He is allowing a 42% hard hit rate with a 38% fly ball rate. that is good batted ball data for us from a stacking perspective. And the Tigers WRC plus versus lefties is up to 108. They should give us some value here. So it's hard not to like what they have been doing. So I like the Tigers when looking for wiggle room when trying to stack the two Los Angeles teams. The must target guy here for the Tigers is Eric Haas. He only has 66 plate appearances versus lefties, but he has a 453 ISO. That is a small sample, but oh my gosh, is it good. Tons of power there. He's a catcher, so he doesn't always play. So hopefully he does for tonight, but I love him if he does. I'm also down for Zach Short at $2,300. He gets the platoon advantage for tonight. Hit a dinger yesterday. And then Robbie Grossman and Jonathan Scope are the priorities among the upper tier guys. So they're not a bad team to stack in a spot like this. And the Tigers, a team I do like quite a bit for tonight. Let's move now to things to watch. I talked about things that went well last night. One thing that did not go well, as I said, not to use Blake Snell despite a plus matchup because his form was so bad. He did get outscored, I will say, by two of the three pitchers we recommended, but he was still really solid in that game. Despite that, I'm going to do it again here with Joe Musgrove. The velocity has been down his past 6 starts. His strikeout rate is 16%. His skill interactive ERA is 5.15. So it's a great matchup, but those numbers are really concerning. So like Snell last night, I am fine missing out on Musgrove if he does pop off. I'm generally a Joe Musgrove guy. I am not that right now. I will hold off until we see things start to improve for him. The Reds are pretty rough against lefties, so I couldn't really put them in stacks, but I am down for some one-offs here, especially the value guys. They're facing Wade LeBlanc, who has a super low strikeout rate. He's letting up a 42% fly ball rate. Not a ton of hard contact, which does limit the appeal a bit as well, but I think we should be able to get a full game here out of Aristides Aquino with Nick Castellanos out. So Aquino in play, Tyler Stevenson, another good value option. I think the Reds very much more so for one-offs versus stacks. I can get a full stack between India, Suarez, Aquino, and Stevenson, but I think I prefer them more for one-offs for tonight. Finally, for your Mally lineups where you have a lot of salary to burn, I would check out the Astros. And I will say the Astros in play for more than just high salaried stacks. They're facing Colby Allard, who hasn't been bad in the rotation, but he also hasn't been elite. And you kind of got to be elite to take down this team if you're a lefty. And honestly, like I said, the Astros are not that bad from a salary perspective. Carlos Correa is $3,000. Yuli Gurriel is $2,700. If Chas McCormick plays, he's $2,500. So if you talk to me during my Q&A later on today, it's very possible I will be higher on the Astros then than I am now. I like them a lot now, but I could wind up pushing them up the stacking list if we talk later on. So keeping my eyes open for the Astros for today. All right, let's finish up here with the dinger calls. We had Swanson last night and Akil Baddoo the night before, so trying to keep the good vibes going. The boring options have not necessarily come through, but let's go with Max Muncy for tonight. Facing Chichi Gonzalez, going to let up a lot of balls in play, letting him enough hard contact. So I think that Max Muncy, given the power that he has, worth a look for tonight. As far as the fun calls, the non-elite guys who could go deep, I think it's between two guys. Maybe we'll just go with both. I would say I'm deciding between Eric Haas and Justin Upton. Upton, we know he has power, but he's just coming off the IL, so I think he counts as a more of a fun one. Haas hitting a lot of homers, but not generally viewed as being like this massive power hitter. So I'm just going to go 3 tonight because why not? My podcast, my rules. So we're going to go Max Muncy, Justin Upton, and Eric Haas as the home run calls for tonight. Be sure to get your home run calls in today, later on during the Q&A session. That's at 4 p.m. on the FanDuel YouTube, Twitch, Facebook, and Twitter pages. Swing by there, give me your dinger calls, and ask your questions about tonight's slate. Also, once again, check out Austin's USC DFS podcast up on the numberFire Daily Fantasy Podcast feed. And if you like what you hear, leave us a rating and review as well. If you have questions for me, I am on Twitter at JimSannes, JimSannes. You can also follow the FanDuel Podcast Network at FanDuel Podcasts. Big thank you to everyone for tuning in for today. Let's go into the weekend on a high note and go win some money once again for tonight. We'll talk to you once again on Monday. This has been the solo shot right here on the FanDuel Podcast Network.